Hi all, today I will be talking on nanotechnology. Coming to the nanotechnology, I will be talking about the introductory part, what are the tools have been used in the nanotechnology, what is green synthesis or the microbial synthesis and how these have been used for the synthesis of the nanoparticles. So what do you mean by nanoparticles? So these nanoparticles are nothing but the particles which range in the 1 to 100 nanometers of size, and in Greek nano means dwarf. Dr. Richard P. Feynman, he gave the first concept of nanotechnology through his famous literature entitled There is a Plenty of Rooms at the Bottom at the American Institute of Technology. The term nanotechnology was coined by Norio Taniguchi in the year 1974. The unique property of this nanoparticle is that the surface to volume ratio of nanoparticles is inversely proportional to their size. So this makes nanoparticles more appropriate and potential application in various fields. These nano objects are lighter, faster, more reactive, cheaper and more energy efficient. Small particle has more surface area, so these nanoparticles they have the largest surface area, and the nano size affects properties like physical. We know the size of the nanoparticles are very small. The chemical properties, they also exhibit optical property. We know the gold, which is an ornament which have been used as ornament for humans. The gold we usually see as yellowish color, right? But the nanoparticles of this gold, they range from red to purple in color. So they are not basically yellowish in color, but the nanoparticles of gold, they range from red to purplish in color. And the nanoparticles, they can be occurring naturally or artificially. In natural process, how they are going to occur? Either by forest fires, by sea spray, mineral composition, volcanic ash, and the viruses. We know the viruses are also they range between few nanometers, right? So they are also a kind of nanoparticle itself. And forest fires, we know whenever the tree burns or any plant or herb shrubs they burn, they actually produce some kind of nanoparticles, right? So these are the few examples of naturally occurring. The next is artificially occurring, where we have smoke. Either it may be from cigarette or by industrial smoke, and or agricultural smokes, and also through welding fumes, industrial effluents, sand blastings, etc. Here in the picture depicted below, you could see the range of few uh, particles and an apple on the scale of nanoscale. So you could see whatever the drug we use, like Remdesivir or Rifampicin or anti-malarial drugs or any other drugs, they range in between 10 to the power of minus 1 to 1 nanometer in size. And whereas the size of nanoparticles, they range in between 1 to 10 to the power plus 2 nanometer in size. So you could see in the picture that SARS-CoV-2, from which this COVID-19 has emerged. So the SARS-CoV-2, they come in the range of 10 to the power plus 2. The eukaryotic cells, again they come in the range of 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power 5. And whereas apple, which could be around 4 to 8 centimeters in diameter, they come under 10 to the power minus 10 to the power 7 to 8 in nanometer on the nanoscale. What are the approach of nanotechnology? So they are basically two types. One is bottom up approach and the top down approach. So in this picture you could see, in top down approach, the large materials, they are broken down into smaller components either by physical method or chemical method, and these are again broken down to form the nanoparticles. So this top down approach, these actually generate some uneven size of nanoparticles, or the undesired nanoparticles may also be produced. Whereas in the bottom up approach, you would see the precursors, they actually come together and they form the radicals, or they form the electrons, right? So these radicals or the electrons, they will be of same breed. So as a result, all the same breeds of particular radical or ions, or the electrons, they fuse, they form the clusters, and these clusters, they again form a molecule structure, and thereby they result in the formation of nanoparticles like fullerenes, diamond, graphene, nanosheets, etc. So there are many tools of the nano technology which have been used. The first one comes the atomic force microscopy. This atomic force microscopy, it actually consists of a cantilever which has a tip. So this tip, when come close to the surface, the attractive force acts between the surface and tip, thus causing bending of the cantilever. So here you have cantilever, and the cone shaped is the tip. So whenever this cantilever comes in vicinity to the sample surface, the cantilever bends because of the attractive force acting between the sample and the tip of the cantilever. Okay, and whenever you further retrace the cantilever nearer to the sample, the cantilever bends furthermore. The more the cantilever comes closer to the sample, the more bending of the cantilever occurs. Okay, so it has a Z scanner which moves the cantilever closer or away from the sample. It also has a XY scanner which moves the sample to and fro. Okay, and whenever there is and also there is a laser beam which is directed towards the cantilever, and from the cantilever again the electron beam is directed towards the position sensitive photodetector. So that is nothing but the PSPD. Whenever the cantilever bends, so the laser beam, it also bends, and it changes the position on the photo detector. So this will be recorded in the feedback controller, which will be sent through the to the monitor, where it will be displaying in the form of image. Okay, so basically there are three types of atomic force microscopy. One is contact, second is non-contact, and the third one is tapping mode. In contact mode, as you could see, the tip of the cantilever, it is attaching to the tip surface of the sample, so it is in a contact with the surface of the sample. The advantage is that yes, it will be giving the most accurate image of the sample, but the disadvantage is, as the tip goes moving onto the sample surface, the tip starts degrading. I mean, the tip starts losing itself because of the rough edges of the sample surface. As this tip of the cantilever, they are expensive, so sometimes usage of non I mean contact mode inhibited or prohibited. Next comes the non-contact mode. Here you could see the cantilever tip is little bit above the surface of the sample, so it actually uh, depends upon the attractive force between the sample surface and the cantilever tip. And next is the tapping mode. So there would be a fixed oscillation frequency of the cantilever tip. So the tip will be oscillating up and down, and whenever it comes in contact with the surface of the sample, it gives signal. Or else it will be giving different signal when it is away from the surface of the sample. The next tool is dip pen nanolithography. It was developed by Chad Mirkin and Northwestern University. So the essential idea of technique is to use the AFM tip as a quill dip pen, dip or coat it with a molecular substance. Okay, so whatever the tip is there, actually it is dipped or coated with a molecular substance. Whenever you pass your tip onto the surface of the sample, it keeps on adding, or it keeps on inking the surface of the sample with a particular molecular transport. Okay, via the water meniscus. Here you could see the water meniscus through which the molecular transport they get arranged in a unidirectional form on the surface of the sample. Right. So upon close approach to a substrate, the molecular ink rolls off the tip and comes in contact with the substrate. By scanning the tip, one can pattern the substrate with a layer of molecule. The next tool being used for the nanotechnology is the dynamic light scattering, or DLS. In this method, the particle size is determined in the solution. Okay. A light beam is directed towards the cuvette containing sample. So here you could see the laser which is being directed onto the cuvette which is having this sample in it. Right. The incident light scatters at an angle at all directions. So whenever this laser beam it passes through the cuvette containing sample, the incident light it scatters at an angle. Okay. So there will be a detector at a particular angle. So whenever the deflected incident light comes in contact or comes falls at an angle where the detector is present, then this detector it detects the incoming light signal and then it shows up on the screen. Okay, the scattered light is detected at a certain angle over time and is used to note the diffusion coefficient and the particle size of the sample by Stokes-Einstein equation. Okay, so whatever the particle size is determined in this step, it is all depending upon the Stokes-Einstein equation, where d trans equals kbt by 6 pi eta r h. The next tool could be scanning electron microscope. We know this scanning electron microscope is used for the morphological examination of a particular sample, where the principle behind this SEM is the electron beam which transfers through the sample, they actually backscatter, or they also produce this secondary electron rays. So these secondary electron rays actually are responsible for the formation of primary image of the sample. Besides that, the backscattered light are also helpful in fine uh, production of the image on the screen. So other method would be TEM. As we know, again the electron beams have been used as a light source in the TEM analysis, and the condenser lens which are very next to the electron source, they convert the electron source into the electron beam which would be then passed throughout the sample, and as a result the electron beam scatters. These scattered electron beams are helpful for the formation of image on the phosphor screen. So here in the TEM picture you could see how the nanoparticles are produced around the cell. So here the darkly stained bodies what you could see on the screen are nothing but the nanoparticles which are surrounding the cells. Okay, so what would be the way of synthesizing the nanoparticles using the microorganisms, which is also known as the green synthesis method? So of course, this method is the bottom-up approach, because the nanoparticles, they are actually being synthesized from the ions to their metallic forms. Okay, and this conversion or the formation of the nanoparticles from ions to metals, they actually occur many, they actually undergo many oxidation and reduction processes. And depending upon the microbes, the nanoparticles could be produced intracellularly or extracellularly, that means inside the cell or outside the cell. Starting with the first microbe, that is the bacteria, we know that each and every living organism or the living being in this on this earth, they undergo stress. So these bacteria, to overcome the stress, they actually involve various mechanisms such as efflux systems, alterations of solubility and toxicity by changing in the redox state of the metal ions, extracellular complexation or precipitation of the metals intracellularly via formation of metal sulfides. And also these properties are applied in bioleaching, bioremediation, microbial corrosion, and as well as biomineralization and the synthesis of nanoparticles. On the right hand side of your screen, you could see how the synthesis of nanoparticles have been carried out using the plants and the microorganisms. So here we can use not only the whole cell of the microorganisms or the plant, but also we can use the plant extract or the microbial extract such as proteins, enzymes, or any other metabolites. Okay, so here what we do is we inoculate the microbial cell or plant uh, cell, and then we add with nano metal, I mean the metal salt, which would result in the formation of metal ions. So after that, if the microorganism is producing the nanoparticles extracellularly, then they undergo an extra step known as capping and stabilization. What is this capping and stabilization? I will be explaining in my upcoming slides. And apart from that, there are many factors which affects the formation of nanoparticles, such as temperature, pH, incubation period, salt concentration, and the centrifugation as well. So for the first time in silver mines, Pseudomonas struzeri strain AG259 was found naturally. This bacteria actually, it was exposed to silver nitrates salts to check whether if they could accumulate the silver nanomaterials or the nanoparticles or not. So as a result, yes, they were able to produce the silver nanomaterials intracellularly. Apart from that, lactobacillus strains, which are commonly found in buttermilk, which is used for the conversion of milk into curd, they actually can convert gold and silver as well, and many other metals like lead or platinum, palladium into nanometals. Um, and one more bacterium, which is known as Enterobacter cloacae Z0206, they actually produce selenium nanoparticles, both intracellularly and extracellularly via the enzyme fumarate reductase. So this enzyme, they actually consist of selenite reducing factor, which helps reducing the selenium metal into the selenium nanoparticles. Um, Ahmad and his co-worker, they actually reported that Shevanella lohica actually could produce very small amount of palladium and platinum nanoparticles within the range of 2 to 7 nanometers, and 2 to 7 nanometers. And apart from that, many magnetotactic bacteria such as Magnetospirillum magneticum, they could produce some chains of magnetosomes of ferric oxide, and as well as they could produce some aggregates of greigite such as ferric sulfate. um, So, what would be the mechanism or the principle behind the production of such nanoparticles by bacteria? They have found that in bacteria like Pseudomonas fruitzeri, the enzyme which is responsible for the production of nanoparticle is NADH dependent reductase enzyme. Okay, which results in the bioreduction of the silver ions into the silver nanoparticles. So here in the picture you could see how a particular microbe, they could either intracellularly produce the nanoparticles, or they could produce the nanoparticle extracellularly. Here in the case of intracellular production of nanoparticle, first the metal which has to be converted into the nanoparticle will be taken up by the bacterial cell. It will be entering into the cell vicinity, and then through a series of metabolic reactions where there will be an involvement of NADPH or NADH enzyme, which is converted into NADP or NADH plus by the release of one electron. So the intermediate compound which is present will be acting as electron donor, or as electron acceptor, which accepts the electron from the release of the NADH or the NADPH, then which again connects with the reduction of a particular molecule, where the keto group is converted into the hydroxyl group, okay, by again the release of the protons. uh, with this succeeding process, the metal will be converted into the nanoparticles. But in the case of the extracellular, again we cannot differentiate between the enzymes or the intermediate molecules which have been used for the synthesis of nanoparticle, both in the intracellular or extracellular. So these are the interconnected or the simultaneous process going on. So here the cellular metabolism occurs where in which the electron will be released. So there will be an oxidation wherein which the metal ions will be converted into the nanoparticles and will be expelled out of the cell. Shravan and with his co-worker, they used Bacillus brevis for synthesis of spherical silver nanoparticles within the range of 41 to 62 nanometers, which has antibacterial activity against multi-drug resistant strains of Salmonella typhi and Staphylococcus aureus. And in Salmonella enterica, which does not produce any nanoparticles of gold, the internal concentration of cationic gold is regulated by a transcriptional activators known as GO1S, and a P-type ATPase exporter GO1T, and a metallochaperone GO1B. Okay, So the next microorganism used for the nanoparticle synthesis would be actinobacteria. So these actinobacteria actually they are responsible for the production of nitrate reductase enzyme. So these nitrate reductase enzyme they actually reduce the metal ions into the nanoparticles. The actinomycetes which produce the nanoparticles inside the cell, inside themselves, they actually produce an enzyme known as cytochrome oxidase, which is an intracellular enzyme. Um, Apart from that, if the actinomycetes they are producing nanoparticles outside the cell, that means extracellularly, so the microbial proteins which are present inside the cell, that is the cytoplasm, they go out of the cell and they bind or surround around the nanoparticle, resulting in the capping or the stabilization. So this process is known as capping. As I was explaining in my previous slide, when I shown the picture, there was a step of capping or stabilization, right? So whenever the nanoparticles produce outside the cell, there may be higher chances of unstable nanoparticle production. So in order to make them stabilized, the microbial proteins they go out of the cell and they bind with these particular nanoparticles to stabilize them. Okay, and these actually what we say, the stabilization particles, they have ability of reducing metal ions, and they also act as capping agents. Okay, and these are actually anionic in nature, whereas the nanoparticles which are produced are cationic nature. So as a result, this cation and ionic reaction occurs and they form a bond between them. So this helps in holding of nanoparticle with that of the microbial proteins. Okay, extracellular proteins. And the oxidation also occurs during these capping or destabilization procedures. Fine. The fungi can also be used for the production of nanoparticles. So these fungi they have been routinely used in the bioprocesses both as viable cells, example Aspergillus species, or as protein extract, for example amylase from Candida pseudotropicalis. And the fungi Fusarium oxysporum challenged with silver and gold salts for 3 days, and they can produce gold or silver nanoparticles extracellularly. On the other side, the fungus verticillium, they can convert silver salts and produce silver metal extracellularly. So how we could go with the process right from the fungi inoculation to the production of nanoparticles. So here, as I have taken an example of verticillium fungi, so this fungi is inoculated on PDA at 25 degrees Celsius, and then it is transferred into the flask which contains MgYP medium at 25 degrees Celsius, and it is incubated for 4 days in shaker incubator, and later on we centrifuge it at 100 degrees Celsius. So after the centrifugation process, the mycelium will be washed with water for 20 minutes, and then we add silver nitrate solution for 3 days. Then after that we fix the mycelium in glutaraldehyde at room temperature for 2 hours, and again we centrifuge to separate the mycelium. After that we undergo the ultrasonification process to recover the nanoparticles from the cell or the mycelium of the fungi. So, how you would find if there is any production of nanoparticles or not? As I said, you one of the properties would be the optical property. So here, the color of the culture would change from yellow to slightly brownish or darkly brownish in color, which indicates the nanoparticles have been formed. So here you could see on your screen how initially the color of the media was yellowish in color. Then after that, if there is any production of nanoparticle, it will be changing into the brown, a slight brown in color or darkly brown depending upon the concentration of the nanoparticle or the size of the nanoparticle. And here you could compare with the control flask where no nanoparticles have been produced, so the media of the color remains unchanged. So what would be the mechanism? So the fungal mycelium, they actually trap the Ag plus ions. Then further other ions accumulate around the mycelium. So the long-term stability of the nanoparticles was also observed, which might be due to the presence of specific fungal proteins into the solution. And these gold nanoparticles actually uses fungus Fusarium oxysporum with aqueous um, AuCl4 ions. So the most plausible reason for the reduction of AuCl4 ions might be the release of NADH reductase enzymes. Okay, so these Fusarium oxysporum, they actually produce NADH dependent reductases, which reduces the gold chloride ions. Okay, so um, again the fungi, Fusarium oxysporum, they produce monodispersed nanoparticles than bacteria. So monodispersed in the sense they produce a very similar in size or characteristics of the nanoparticles when compared to the bacteria. There will be uniform production of nanoparticles with respect to their size or any other characteristics. Here you could see how the mechanism carried out in fungi for the production of nanoparticles. First is the intracellular synthesis, where the gold chloride aqueous solution, it gets entered into the cell. Then the enzyme, it converts or it reduces the metal ion into the metal. So it reduces the oxidation state of the metal, and then the clumps or the aggregates of the metal ions are formed. This results the formation of nanoparticles. So here you could see the cream color represent the gold nanoparticles, whereas the purple pie shaped are nothing but the water molecules. uh, and here whatever you could see which is present along with the water molecules are nothing but the nitrate ions. The next would be the extracellular synthesis, where the enzyme which is present on the surface of the fungi, they actually entrap the Ag plus ions from the silver nitrate solution, and then they convert it into Ag plus 0, and then this results in the formation of clusters. And apart from this, as these nanoparticles would be unstable in the environment, so the microbial proteins which are produced or which are present in the cytoplasm, they come outside the cell and they surround the nanoparticle, they encapsulate and they form capping. So this process is known as capping or stabilization process. The next microbe could be used is algae. So these algae actually maintained at 28 degrees Celsius, particularly Trichoderma cochinensis. It was maintained at 28 degrees Celsius in the algal culture chamber, having sufficient amount of light in enriched seawater medium of Gillard. So Gillard is the medium in which the algal culture was grown. For the intracellular synthesis of gold nanoparticle, the algae was grown in the Gillard medium at 28 degrees Celsius under shaking at 200 rpm for 15 days in the algal culture chamber having a proper light source. After 15 days of incubation, these cells were harvested by centrifugation at 5000 rpm for 10 degrees Celsius at 20 minutes, and then the cells were washed thrice with sterile distilled water under sterile conditions. Then the harvested cells they suspended in 100 ml of aqueous solution of 1 millimolar hydroxide, I mean hydro gold chloride solution in 500 ml of flask. Now this mixture was put into algal culture chamber under shaking condition at 28 or 29 degrees Celsius for 200 rpm for 48 hours. Okay. Then next microbe used for nanoparticle synthesis could be yeast. So commonly used yeast could be Candida glabrata and Schizosaccharomyces pombe. So these have been widely used for the production of cadmium sulfate nanoparticles. So the media could be prepared for the production of Saccharomyces pombe culture, and again they could be challenged with some sorts of metal salts for the production of nanoparticles. Besides that, a strain of Yerovia lipolytica, which is marine yeast, it was used for the production of silver nanoparticles. So the principle was that the brown pigment could be the reason for the biomineralization of the metallic ions in the marine yeast. Okay, so another microbe could be used is viruses. So viruses, we know they are actually naturally occurring particles. They also range in size of nanometers as well. Um, in China, virus known as squash leaf curl China virus, it was used as a biotemplate to fabricate silver and gold nanomaterials. So this SLCCNV was exposed to hydroxide gold chloride and silver nitrate precursors in presence of sunlight, and quick formation of SLCCNV metallic hybrid nanomaterials in an eco-friendly way was observed. Okay, so it was actually a very quick, method. It hardly took like 5 minutes for the formation of nanomaterial hybrid. Okay, then again a wild type of bacteriophage P22 was utilized for the synthesis of cadmium sulfate, and the nanocrystal quantum dots was around 60 nanometers in size, present in the procapsid, and this bacteriophage P22 actually they possessed capsomeres composed of hexamers and pentameric clusters. The pre-synthesized cadmium quantum dots resemble the hexameric and pentameric patterns of assembly on the P22 shells, which might be due to interaction with particular protein pockets. So, what would be the advantages of these green methods? First, these are eco-friendly and they are non-toxic, so they do not cause any harm to the environment or the surrounding or to the nature. And these are very cheaper comparatively with that of physical methods and chemical methods. The disadvantages would be, of course, the production right away from the isolation and the generation time of the microbe is slow. So the production would be less, and there would be uncontrolled size, production, shape, or crystallinity because of difference in the factors such as temperature or pH or centrifugation or any other factors. So these are few other microbes involved in the nanoparticle synthesis, where you can see the bacterium known as Bacillus sphaericus, strain JG812. So this could be used for the production of aluminium, uranium, plumbum, and cadmium nanoparticle, which could be in between 15 to 25 nanometers of range, and the nanomaterials were spherical in shape. Of course, the bacterium would produce the nanoparticle extracellularly. Here again the capping or the stabilization procedure may occur. And again, the other strain of Magnetospirillum is Gryphis valens, which would produce the chains of magnetosomes or FeSO4. And the characteristics that these magnetosomes membrane are actually modified with CBR, and this Magnetospirillum species bacterium, it actually produces the nanomaterial intracellularly. And apart from that, the other example of fungi would include Aspergillus velvetschii and Trichoderma herzianum. Uh, this Aspergillus velvetschii, it could produce selenium nanoparticles, and these Trichoderma species, they produce chitosan nanoparticles. So here are the few other examples for yeast and cyanobacteria. In cyanobacteria, you could see Spirulina plantensis. They produce alloy, which is gold and silver alloy, which could be in between the range of 7 to 60 nanometers, which is spherical in shape. Again, this microorganism produce the alloy extracellularly. And the fungi Helminthosporum solani, they produce nanoparticle platinum, zinc, and copper, which would be in the range of 80 to 100 nanometers. And the viruses, the tobacco mosaic virus, they actually produce silicon nanoparticles or lead sulfate nanoparticles, as well as the cadmium sulfate nanoparticles. And so the size would be less than 30 nanometer, but again the problem would be the nanoparticles which this particular virus, the TMV, have been producing were multi-shaped. So they could be cone shaped or rectangular shaped, square shaped, or spherical shaped, or irregular shape. So not uniform or monodispersed nanoparticles were produced, but rather they were producing multi-shaped nanoparticles. And algae such as Spirulina platensis, they produce gold, as I said before, and Chlorella vulgaris. And the diatom such as Navicula atomus can produce the gold nanoparticle, which could be in the range of 9 to 12 nanometers. again it could produce extracellular. So here you could see most of the bacteria, they actually produce um, nanoparticles extracellularly. So this is the effects of factors on nanoparticle synthesis. In the above series of picture, you could see an example of fungi known as Verticillium luteolalbum. So these are the 10 images of this particular organism showing at different pHs how the nanoparticles were produced. So at pH 3 you could see number of nanoparticles with uniform or monodispersed nanoparticles having the same size, but in pH 5 you could see comparatively larger size of the nanoparticles where some irregular shape or the cone, I mean the triangle shaped nanoparticles have also been observed. In pH 7 even more larger size of nanoparticles have been seen. In pH 9 comparatively less number of nanoparticles have been observed. Here down the series of images, they actually show the effect of the culture incubation period. So A represents 24 hours growth, B represents 48 hours of growth, and 72, I mean the C represents the 72 hours of the growth. So here you could see in the 24 hours growth old culture, there are numerous monodispersed production of nanoparticles. So these are very small in size, right? Whereas you could see in 48 hours there are comparatively less, and in C again there are much lesser when compared to the previous images. So that means the 24 hours old culture can accumulate a huge number of nanoparticles inside or outside their cells. Here you could see again the effect of temperature on production of nanoparticle via fungi Verticillium luteolalbum. So here in this A image you could see the 1 hour exposure to gold chloride solution at 25 degrees Celsius. In B you could see 24-hour exposure at 25 degrees Celsius. In C you could see 1 hour exposure at 50 degrees Celsius and at 24 hours exposure for I mean at 50 degrees Celsius. So you could see as the temperature is low, there would be much smaller production of nanoparticles, and as the temperature increase, the size of the nanoparticles also increase. And also the you could see when you compare with within the same temperature range, uh, again the uh, culture which have been grown in lesser period of time shows much uniform and numerous number of nanoparticles growth, I mean the accumulation. So here are the references. Actually, there's a huge list. The more deeper you go, so well. And at last, thank you so much, everyone, for your patient listening.